Emily Falvey. I'm the director curator here, for those of you who don't know me, and I think there are quite a few today. We would like to acknowledge that Mount Allison University is located within the traditional territory of Mi'kma'ki, the unceded ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq. Our relationship and our privilege to live on this territory was agreed upon in the Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1725 to 1752. Because of this treaty relationship, it is to be acknowledged that we are all treaty people and have a responsibility to respect this territory. So I was going back through our calendar, and I realized that the last in-person artist talk at the Owens was in January 2020 when Meryl McMaster was here. So it's been a full 2 years since we've gathered this way. So we're really lucky to be here and to have Shaheer Zazai with us. Before I introduce him, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. You may notice that there is a transcriptionist for this event. So her name is Kim, or their name is Kim, and they're in Georgia. And I'd just like to point out that it's a person who's doing the transcription and not AI. I'm very nervous. I haven't done this for a while. So Shaheer Zazai received a BFA from OCAD University in 2011 and was artist in residence at OCAD University as part of the Digital Painting Atelier in 2015. He is a recipient of Ontario Arts Council grants, and he was a finalist for EQ Bank's Emerging Digital Artist Award in 2018. Since graduating, Zazai has had several solo and group exhibitions, such as those at the Capacity 3 Gallery, CAFKA Biennial 2019, Art Gallery of Mississauga, Glenhyrst Art Gallery of Brant, Double Happiness Projects, and Patel Brown. His digital works have been covered by CBC Arts in 2018. Oh, I was supposed to ask you how to pronounce this. Ajam Media Collective in 2019, and the Globe and Mail in 2020. In addition to his solo exhibition, Are We Even, which we just finished installing today at the Owens, his current and upcoming projects include a solo exhibition at the Agha Khan Museum in Toronto, a group exhibition, Shifting Ground, at Digital Arts Resource Center in Ottawa, which used to be Saw Video. Every Answer is Correct, an off-site group exhibition curated by the Power Plant in Toronto, and Porous Identities, the inaugural group exhibition for Patel Brown's Montreal location. One last thing, if you have a question, I have a microphone, and this will enable the transcriptionist to transcribe what you say. So just, I'll run over and shove it in your face, basically. Thank you. Thanks, Shaheer. Oh my God, this is not something I'm used to.
All right, my turn to take off my mask. Hello, everyone. Thank you for filling the room and extended all the way by the door. I hope I'm loud enough and clear enough. Please interrupt whenever you feel like it. I prefer interruptions instead of me rambling on. So ask questions in between if it crosses your mind instead of having to wait till the end. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Owens, for having me here, for giving me a chance to share my work in a small town, and I love small towns. So I'm Shaheer. She's already done the introduction. I consider myself a painter and a digital artist because both my practices kind of go simultaneously next to each other. Even though the light is shining on the digital, the painting always continues on the side. Prior to my I graduated from drawing and painting. I don't know how many people are planning on majoring in drawing and painting. Anyone? Nobody. Wow. That's great. Not many of you are going to be confused when you graduate, that means. When I was a student, I'm very jealous of you guys, by the way. I wish I was back into a student state of mind for longer, but I guess we all have to grow up. When I was a student, I did my major in drawing and painting. I really did not embed myself in the art world as much as I should have. I didn't volunteer. I didn't go to that many exhibitions. So I was very internal with my work. I wasn't really exploring what was going on outside of me. But So I graduated from drawing and painting. Painting was my major up till 2013. So 2013 is where my digital practice starts. I didn't really consider it a practice. It was just me messing around on a Word document. That's really the root of my practice. It's going to sound very low-tech because it really is low-tech. There's nothing complicated here. So these are the earliest works. When I started this digital practice, I'll keep calling it practice. When I started this, I basically gave myself a punishment to type 2013 dots and spaces because we all sit in front of our laptops too much. Now we've got laptops and our phones to sit in front of all the time. It was January 1st, 2013, 1 year ended and the other one had just begun, and you've got your New Year resolutions and you want to be achieved, and none of that was there. I was on a couch in front of my laptop. So I opened a Word document and I told myself that I'm not allowed to move till I've finished typing 2013 dots and spaces. So I basically did this for 2013 times, and by the end of it, it really didn't feel like much. So Word has 15 highlighter colors, so that became my palette. Consider it a limited palette. So I gave each number a numerical location on the page. Basically, I assigned each color a number, went randomly, like that's the order. Yellow is the first one on the top left when you open the highlighter option. So gave each one a number, and I started placing them on the page based on where they belong on the page in that numerical order. So 1, 2, 3, and it goes to 15. Black included in these ones, but blacks don't actually appear in my work till last year. We'll get to that. So playing with numbers, colors, and repetition, if you just keep messing around with this, it started forming patterns. And all of this was very unintentional. Like I said, this was not intended to be an art practice. This was just me messing around, and because you're an artist and you want to engage with social media. At the time, I used to post these on Facebook, pre-Instagram activity life. So I used to post them on the Facebook, and people responded really well to it, and I was very surprised, annoyed, because I'm a painter. I want them to look at my paintings. The response to these was, excuse my language, but ridiculously way higher than it was to paintings. And I just kept doing it. I used to make one a day, sometimes more than one a day, and I would take a screenshot and post it, and this became my daily routine. You will notice a pattern and the things I say about my work. My work very much is defined by rules, regulations, and boundaries. I'm making it all up. Nobody else is like. Some of them comes because of the limitations of the software, but majority of it is made up. One of the rules I made up at the time was I'm just going to delete the original files because I didn't want to give myself a chance to go back and edit anything. So I would keep the screenshot, delete the original file, and as a result, I've got over 100 random patterns that only exist in the form of a screenshot. Yes? There you go. You're going to be walking around a lot today.
I don't want to put you through this. I just wanted to make the observation that they're strangely relaxing to look at.
Oh,
I can see why people would enjoy them.
That's nice to hear. To quote my roommate of the time when I was making these, he told me if I do it for another week, I'm officially crazy. 12 years later now, almost 12 years later, I'm still doing it. And the process actually is much more therapeutic than it's, how would I put it? For my paintings, I need mental isolation. I need to be focused. I need to have that space, mental space. I think I'm speaking gibberish at this point, but I need that state of mind to paint. But with digital, I can do this anywhere. I could be doing it right now while I'm talking. I could be sitting at home. I could be on a plane. It stopped mattering. It's so doesn't basically doesn't require mental energy from me because all I'm doing is I'm counting numbers and I'm playing. And because there's no rules and everything is improvised, I don't really have to be bringing much to the table. It's just me sitting, typing, and highlighting. So I played and I played. As you can see, I'm just playing. So one thing at some point I realized is that I need to work with characters that occupy the same amount of space on a page, considering I think it's called monospaced text. They take up the same amount of space on the page all the time. So that way I can have a perfect grid. So, and then I can make straight lines. That's about it. That's the only purpose those have. And the more I played with it, the more textile-looking patterns started forming, and this became another annoyance. I was originally had an annoyance of nobody caring about painting, and then on top of that, these were looking like textiles, and I'm not a textile artist. So how dare you make textile work when you're not a textile artist? That became the second annoyance. But I continued, of course, never give up and never stop, no matter how many annoyances you have. Fast forward to 2015. I'm going through this fast, but I can always share links. These are all just me experimenting. Fast forward. Sorry. Nope. There we go. In 2015, Emily mentioned that I applied for the Digital Painting Atelier residency at OCAD. Apply for it when you get the chance, when you get around to it. It's a pretty good program. It's a 1-week-long residency, and there came a point where I had to accept my work and its relationship to textiles, and the relationship really came down to understanding a very basic thing that I was doing that basically is the language of textiles. Digital image making is a bunch of pixels. Textiles are a bunch of pixels. They're both a series of numerical decisions. That's the language that digital and textiles have in common. Not only that, computer language textiles is the grandfather of computer language. Does anyone know what a jacquard loom is? I'm seeing some nods. So jacquard loom used to be a mechanical loom that would take up the size of this room, and it used to function on a bunch of punch cards, which was a series of holes, and these holes became commands like yes, no, weave it, don't weave it, this thread or not this thread, and that became 1, 0, 1, 0 became binary, binary became computers. So computers wouldn't exist if it wasn't for textiles, and I wasn't paying attention to that aspect till it hit me. And along the way, I learned another aspect, relationship of carpets to, forget computers, but carpets, this is where cultural relations come into the picture. Again, I'm not a textile artist at this point. I am really trying to stay away from it. But I realized that the work is looking like textile because I'm using textiles language. This residency came up, and it was an opportunity to apply, and I was like, okay, make a life-size carpet, but make it in a Word document. So I applied for the residency. Residency is 1 week long. 1 week means 40 hours of work if you're working 9 to 5, and that's what I was doing. So the new rule I applied was I have 40 hours of typing to make this thing. It's improvised again, so it's not really planned. All of my decisions happen in the top left corner. That's where I start from. So when I applied and came time for the residency, I learned another little glitch about Microsoft Word. Word has a limit of what page size it outputs, but it actually allows you to open any page size you want. You can make a page size the size of this campus, and it'll let you open it. When it comes to actually saving it and outputting it, it won't let you do that. I reached out to Microsoft customer service thinking somebody's going to respond, right? They said it's Adobe's problem because I'm trying to save a PDF. When I went to Adobe, they said, no, this is a Microsoft problem. You know, when you go ask your mom for something, they're like, go ask your dad. Yeah, they sent me back and forth, and I decided I'm going to figure it out myself. The new rule was make it out of multiple pages because Another rule was I have to make work on a 1-to-1 scale. I'm not going to blow anything up. I'm not going to shrink anything. So this was 44 by 90 inches. Takes up a good amount of space in a room if this was your carpet. And this came out. And while I was working on this, I learned that carpets are actually, they're garden designs. You're looking at an aerial view of a garden. All carpets have a central motif, has boundaries, borders, and everything else is kind of curated around the central figure. And the central figure in a garden is a fountain, and the borders are the walls, and everything else in the garden is curated around the central fountain. This became the basis of the next bunch of work I made. So I did this for the residency, felt great, came out of it, still was very annoyed that nobody was paying attention to painting, but I continued making work. My next thought was I gotta make economical work. It can't be always massive, even though making big works feel really good when you're an artist or an art student. But not everyone has the wall for it. Not everyone is gonna be willing to pay the money it would cost to buy something. So I decided to make smaller carpets, still making carpets. So these were made out of 9 legal size page, which is 8.5 by 14. This became my new rule to function under, and I made about 7 of them. And the more I worked on the carpets, this idea was running in the back of my head that I want to turn these into a physical carpet. They have to become a physical carpet. But again, you got to keep making up rules for yourself. The new rule was it had to be done in Afghanistan. I am from Afghanistan. I wanted these done there, in that air, in that dirt, and somehow come out of there. I thought it was very simple as just go to a carpet store and be like, hey, I want to get these done. Where do you get your carpets? Can you connect me? Turned out nobody could find me weavers that were physically present in Afghanistan. Is there any Afghans in the room? No? It's okay. We're rare in the art world. And everyone suggested everything else. They said, I'll get it done in Iran, Pakistan, India, Turkey, but not Afghanistan. The last person who suggested Afghanistan was like, I'll find you Afghan weavers, but it'll come with the label saying made in Pakistan. Again, not okay. So I paused on the idea, continued making work. These are the works that's in that room. You actually get to see them up close. They're small works. I went even more economical. I had to go small so that you can have it in your home as well. I made small ones. Originally, I was making these, and the idea was, I'm making up stuff as I go. The idea was that they look like test strips, chemical test strips. When you dip it into something, half of it changes color. So I made up what the reverse of each color would look like within those 15 color limit. They don't actually translate. If you're applying color theory, don't try and test me on it. So I continued on smaller works. Somewhere along the way, this is where things will maybe get philosophical or personal. This series is called A Study in Human Error. These works were, that one's going to take time to load, ignore it. The intention became, so prior to this, everything was very symmetrical, very calculated. I was not allowing any mistakes. I used to go back and count all my typed characters, make sure everything was lining up and square. If something was not right, fix everything. Microsoft Word has a glitch, which is highlighter colors changes tone at random. It's a non-issue for them. It's a non-issue for everybody else who uses a Word document. But for me, it's a major issue because if I'm working on something in the middle of the color changes tone, I got to fix everything again because there is no reversing it. There's no like close your file, reopen it, and everything is good. Not the case. So I face little issues like that if there's any medium issues. So as I was working, it was actually this one that changed my thought. The intention was to make non-symmetrical work. Not only that, as I continued working on this, this is a 4-page piece. It's actually made into 4 pages stitched together. This area, I don't know if I can zoom. Oh, I can zoom. Wow. This area that looks slightly different color, that basically, for me to create a negative space, which is all the white area around this shape, I can't take the text out, because then the number of characters on a line would change and everything jumbles. So the only way that can happen is, same goes for textile, like you can't just make a random shape. So the only way that could have happened for me was making the text white and making it invisible to your eye or to the printer. But this, normally, if I made a change in decision, that means all this text was originally white because this was a negative space. But then I changed my mind and did something else, but I let it stay. This was something that would have killed me normally in my OCD. But I had to change the way I was functioning. And the more I did this, I realized that I was changing the more of this digital work I made. Something you mentioned earlier about how they're calming to look at. The therapeutic aspect, my wife is here. She is the one who told me many times that you're doing art therapy to yourself. I wasn't fully agreeing with her at the time, but I completely agree. I gave myself art therapy over time. So going back to being a painter, I used to be a painter. I am a painter, not used to be. This is what my paintings used to look like. And never paid attention to the relationship that they had to what was coming next. And all of this is at the period where I switched from this aesthetic in my painting and I started making digital work. You guys will realize at some point that most of the things you realize about your work is afterthought, even though in school you are told to have the concept ready and produce the work based on an idea. At some point, this might not be the way you work, but for me, I've realized that all of these things I'm saying, everything I'm saying I've realized has come years later, not when I was making the work. So this is what my paintings used to look like, and around this time, being 2013, 2014, the digital work came about. But the reason why I'm showing this is that prior to my digital practice, my lens was very, negative is a negative word, but I'll call it negative. My lens was negative in self-reflection. My main theme of my practice was Afghanistan. But not just that, it was more of a constantly criticizing it, criticizing who we are, where we went wrong, what did we do wrong, what did we do wrong for the country, and it was constantly like, wrong, wrong, nothing is good, wrong, and that was it. That was the only mode of function. But of course, I wasn't looking at it like that at the time. And that changed when my digital practice started becoming a daily routine. Also, at some point, I accepted that my painting and my digital work need to exist separately, almost as two different personalities. They are two sides of my brain. And so a study in human error became a further realization that I was changing how I was functioning. I was allowing mistakes to exist. I was accepting mistakes. It's less mistakes. It's just like the uniqueness of who you are. You have glitches. We all do. And I was not accepting of that before, mainly because I guess I am an immigrant. As an immigrant, as a person in diaspora, I mean, when I look back to my life, I'm not that old, but when I look back, there's been a lot of changes in environments, changes in countries, change in cities, change in schools. Born in Afghanistan, lived in Pakistan 13 years, Canada 17. And with this much change going on at an early age, you start functioning like an adult. Like there's no room for errors. You can't be a child. You can't just fall and cry. It's like you fell, get up, continue on. That was the mode of function, and that was seeping into my work. So my digital practice was very controlled, very symmetrical, no mistakes allowed. And when I started doing these, I realized I'm allowing things that would have never been okay. So, short version of that being that, yes? Ask more questions, guys. I can keep elaborating.
I'm just curious about when you started to embrace the mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions about how you approach these compositions. Did you sketch anything out in advance, or did you start with the blank screen?
Blank screen.
Okay.
Never sketch. I still don't sketch.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because I feel like I would get bored if I knew what I was going to make. Sorry, you had another question.
Yeah, so then if it was sort of a blank screen, and did you only allow mistakes to alter the trajectory of the composition, or did you also make some aesthetic decisions?
I'd say the mistakes became more like, from the painter perspective, it's the layers. After a while, you make a decision that I don't want this layer to be visible. I just stopped hiding my layers. It was more that you made a decision, you have to live with it,
Right.
and it has to remain visible. So that became the mode of function about it. I mean, non-symmetry was the match for the fire in this situation, and then I allowed things to be visible, but that actually became, every little thing like this that happens along the way has become a tool. So what happened in this one, with this area being visible as the layer underneath, became a tool in creating, when this loads, this shape. This, what do you call it, an oval? This egg shape. That is purely because I was able to play with font color. So that allowed me to create this shape. So, you know, the idea of mistakes becoming
You
a
improvised,
lesson.
kind of.
Yeah.
You
I
kinda-
continued improvising, but mistakes became a lesson, and started using it forward. I hope I answered.
You did, thank you very much.
So, on that note of becoming a different person, I continued becoming a different person. Next thing I'll show you is this project. I was given the chance to create a site-specific work. Actually, it was more like I was invited to show work at U of T's Mississauga location. They have 4 outdoor light boxes. And the idea was we had to respond to a lens that an artist had created out of sand. They'd taken sand, melted it, created a lens, and we had to respond to it in some way, whether it was existing work or new work. And for me, every opportunity is a chance to make new work. I've always approached my work that way. So this became an excuse to make new work. This was a 6 foot by 9 foot light box, and I had to make a work that size. So this was the main design. And to play on the idea of transformation and allowing the strangeness that can happen along the way, I created this one. Then I changed the rules. So you guys will end up reading my titles at some point. If they look really confusing, they don't really mean much, except they are acronyms of what were the rules I applied when I was making the work. That's about it. So this one just BWG-FDBD, which actually means Blackwood Gallery, First Design, Base Design. And then I changed the rules. This one is called BWG-FDE29R90C, which means Blackwood Gallery, First Design, enlarge to 9, rotate 90 degrees clockwise. Whenever the image loads, it would be nice to actually show you what I'm trying to talk about. It's this one. The reason it's sideways, I selected all and I changed the font size to 9, so that's the enlarged to 9. And the 9 comes from the 6 foot by 9 foot light box. These things are setting the rules of how the work is made. it won't load. It's okay, but you can see a small version. So it's sideways because I did the rotation of 90 degrees because it was no longer fitting the light box if it was the right way, because it just expanded when I enlarged the font size. Then came the next one where the rule was L1S 26 L2E 29. Does anyone want to make a, I'm not going to torture you like that. Line 1, shrink to 6. Line 2, enlarge to 9. So I took everything that was the first line, made it 6-point form. Second one, 9.6, 9. And I kept doing that for every line till it became this gibberish looking, but still referencing the original image. And this was the last piece. Where basically I removed the action of enter. You know how when you type a sentence and then you press enter, it goes to the next line? But if you remove all the enters, it just becomes a run-on sentence. This is a run-on sentence. So that was about transformation. And now we come to where we started. I mentioned that black has only existed at these early works and they never appeared again. Another color that I stayed away from for the longest time was yellow, because it's the most generic highlighter color. But once I used it, I've kind of fallen in love with the color. It's the best to use next to anything. It just complements everything so well that it has, like, now I look for excuses to use yellow. But black I stayed away from because it's black. I don't know what more that I can say. Like, there was no real reason. But what, so this work, this body of work is part of, was part of my, let's see. There we go. This virtual tour still exists online. So this was the last exhibition in February. It was called A Call Home. I was working on this. This has been the project that's been developing over all the years that I said I was going to make carpets. I finally found somebody, which was basically my dad's university friend, who was in Afghanistan, and he said, I can help you with this. Let me look for some weavers. And he found some weavers that were in Kabul, which is the capital of Afghanistan. And I sent them a bunch of JPEGs and gave them dimensions I wanted these carpets to be, and that was it for communication. And of course, at that point, you get nervous as to what's going to come out. Highly impressed as to what they were able to achieve. This leads to also why the exhibition is called A Call Home. They transformed my work. They changed them so much, yet you can't tell anything changed. There's a tip, you can measure anything in the space. Anyways, so these works are these works. So I sent them the digital versions and I gave them dimensions and they were able to weave these works. But what they did was, them being weavers and speaking a different language, it's almost like they speak a different visual language, material language, yet still it's the same math. They were able to actually recreate the work where it looks exactly like my work, but when you go up close, nothing is the same, because they've changed little things like where it looks like a flower in my design, it was just a diamond shape. They've incorporated, they've adjusted things. For mine, these shapes were all connected, and these things, it's hard to explain without having to have the digital one next to it as a comparison. But this for me was amazing because they're no longer my work. They're translations of my work. It's a collaboration with somebody out in the middle of nowhere on the other end of the world that I've never met in person and I've never actually talked to. And it's all a broken telephone communication. But I was in the middle of this project and we had agreed with the gallery, we're going to do a solo show. February was what was scheduled. And these carpets went into production what year is it, 2022? So they 2021, and they finished and reached Canada July of 2021, and in August, Afghanistan's political climate changed once again after 20 years and went back in the hands of Taliban. I don't know how much you guys are keeping up with Afghanistan's politics, but things just shifted back 20 years. With Taliban going into power and me trying to do an exhibition where I'm trying to have a very positive conversation about Afghanistan, the aim of the exhibition was, let's come together, let me tell you a bit more about Afghanistan that is outside of the three things everybody seems to know, which is war, terrorism, opium, Taliban. But I was suddenly stuck in state of mind where I'm like, how can I go into a room, especially a gallery, which is almost like the most elite platform of the Western world, and then walk in there and try and have a very nice, cheerful conversation, show them colorful things I've made. Meanwhile, the country is going through what it is. I considered canceling the exhibition while I continued working on it. And while I continued working on it, I just couldn't bring myself to produce in color. So when you take color out of the equation on a Word document, all I'm left with is just a blank page and a bunch of text. So that's when I addressed the color black. This specific body of work I've isolated and called it Black Out. And this opened a new door in my medium. It was always there, I just didn't know about it. I never used font color fully integrated into my work. And because there was no more color, all I was left with was font, played around with font color. Turns out, in font color, you can do any color you want. I'm not limited to the 15 anymore. So I started playing with the tonal variation of black going to white. So it basically is me going 100% white to 90% to 80, and then going all the way down to 0% white, which becomes black. And I started playing with this more and more. So the page is filled with text, highlight everything black, and then play around with the font color to create. And this created a third dimension in the work. While I was trying to process, these works basically became a way I processed my struggle of trying to do an exhibition at a time. I'm trying to do an exhibition. As I made these, I came to the conclusion that I can't add to the problem by canceling an exhibition. Because as artists, and as artists in diaspora, we're kind of stuck in this two-part duty. One is you're assigned, you're put in a box, and that box is what you represent. You represent an artist that's from Afghanistan, okay? So when you're put in that box, you suddenly become the educator of that topic. Meanwhile, you're trying to learn about yourself and what that even means. So you're an educator of something that you're trying to learn yourself. So when you have that weight on you and that duty to be the educator of this thing, and to cancel the exhibition would have basically meant the country's not doing very well, news is only showing you negative, and I'm going to add to the problem, and I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. So I couldn't do that, had to continue with the exhibition because have to take every opportunity to continue educating. So I continued with the exhibition. The exhibition actually became a reality, and I called it a call home. A call home because for me, Afghanistan is an inaccessible home. My home is inaccessible. I don't just have the opportunity to go visit it once in a while. So a call home, one, because of the carpets and how the response was. The carpets was, the images I sent was my message home. The response was the carpets. So that's where the carpets and the black and white works came. This resulted in these works. 2 of these are in this exhibition, in that room. The introduction of text color combined with the highlighters suddenly opened the option of doing 3D within the 2D platform that I was functioning. So started having fun, again, keep improvising, keep producing work. These works were actually, I didn't even show you guys. 2 of these works are in that room. These are made on a jacquard loom. I mentioned a jacquard loom earlier. These are produced on a jacquard loom. What's amazing is that jacquard looms have been computerized now. They no longer take punch cards. A computer is feeding the information. But the most amazing thing, please do touch them when you're in that room and look at the backs, because the machine is programming and making the decision to make certain threads visible on the front for you to see the design and the colors you see. But none of the colors are actually, what you see is not the thread color. It's actually threads sitting next to each other, making you see the colors you see. Like a light blue is basically blue and white threads. A dark blue is blue and black threads. And same goes for the purple that you see. It's actually a bunch of colors, threads sitting next to each other. Not only that, when you look at the back, because what's visible on the front, the back is actually a negative image of the front, because everything that's hiding is creating the inverse of the same. So the works I was showing, these I created, those ones that are in the room on the previous page I was showing you, they were just me taking my design, applying the jacquard rule to it, and producing it to see what happens. Results were amazing. So these ones I designed with the intention of producing a much larger jacquard piece, but as a result I made my design really small, so that when I translate them into a larger jacquard piece, the text may become visible. That was it. That was my intention. The results were amazing. What else can I tell you about? I feel like I've come to the end. There's a video work in there made out of screened recordings. I could be doing a lot of what I do by just using newer technology. I could feed a computer an algorithm and tell it to generate things, but that really would take away my purpose of doing things. Also comes from lack of knowledge of new software, so how can you function within the limits you have? And I think limits are good. We all will learn this one day, but limits are good. So my screen recordings are me just messing around in a Word document and keeping a screen recording running at the same time. And then I speed it up so that something that was like a half-an-hour recording becomes a 4-minute video. And this was purely, these videos are a result of happy accidents. I pressed tab by mistake one day, and that just like shifted everything, and I was like, shit. And I was like, wait, but this is cool. And then I just kept doing that, just kept pressing random buttons. And these glitchy looking videos are a byproduct of mistakes, happy accidents, if I can call them still. And that brings me to the end of everything I can talk about. Takes a long time. I really want to. The dream is, I think as an artist, we all have one thing we want, and that's time. If we could all have all the time in the world, that wouldn't be really nice. That would be really nice. I would like to. I want to learn more about textiles. I have a few experiments that I've started in my studio, and they're just like things that I show us, like, look at this, I started this experiment. I started this little weaving that I've only done a line this long on something this big. And it's been a few years that this thing's just been sitting in the studio because lack of knowledge and not knowing the right technical way. I guess that's one important thing about textiles, is that technicality matters, and being able to do things a bit more right. The first answer being that yes, I would like to do more. I have a ribbon weaving on my wall at the studio. The other is that I'm not really planning things. I would like to continue collaborating with weavers in Afghanistan because that's a very important project to me. Because I still don't consider myself a textile artist, I think I am taking from a trade that I need to give back to. So that element is important to me. So if I can continue working with weavers in Afghanistan, I hope it develops into a program that can help them in some way or help people locally. Outside of that, collaboration is important. I'll continue doing that. And one day I would love to be somebody who can actually weave things themselves. I was very surprised at how close they got to what I had sent. I mean, if we were to look at, let's say, this one, just gonna maybe open a new tab. They were able to get it pretty accurate. So that's this one that we were just looking at. So they were able to achieve the design and the color as closely as possible. I was aware that they're not going to be doing very accurate colors because they're using natural dyes. So you working with natural dyes, I wasn't even expecting that they would get it this right. I thought I'm just going to get something very different. And part of the worry was that I just ordered 12 carpets and I have no idea what's going to come. So very happy at what happened. The translation is amazing because I've learned now what they do. So this is where it became amusing for me, is that I sent them something that is so pixelated, like I've done the pixel aspect of it, but they gave my JPEG to their digital person who takes my image and recreates it on a graph sheet. Because a weaver sits and reads a graph sheet, and that tells them how many knots would make what shape. So it went through this filtration or translation process that resulted in what they did. And my relationship to color is, I think it's developing over being something specific. I'm not an artist who mixes their colors. I know it's one of those no-nos in the art that don't use the color straight from the tube. I only use it straight from the tube. I don't have the patience. I basically, as much as this looks like I have a lot of patience, I don't have the patience for a lot of other things, and that's one of them is mixing colors. So being limited to color in Word was like a blessing. Now my palette has expanded. I've recently learned that there's a paint bucket tool. It's dangerous, but I'm curious where that's going to go. But as for the carpets, I think they did a great job. They used natural dyes, and they got it as close as it could. Some things don't look as exact, like this has got an olive green background, but what ended up happening in the carpet version of it is more a green. And they simplified certain things and made certain things very complex. And that's where I'm like, it's not an ability thing. This is somebody made the decision that this needs to be simplified and that one needs to be complex.
I love that idea of you giving that over to somebody else and letting that system sort of dominate the practice. I think it's really interesting.
I think it's has again to do with me giving up control, changing how I work, allowing mistakes to exist. And I know some artists are a lot more, their art is a lot more precious to them to that point where letting it go or allowing somebody else to do something to it is difficult to process. I'm the other way around. Because I was not. I was a painter. And I think we are at a university. Last time I talked to students, I had to remind them, I'm going to say things that are not very pro what happens in school. we graduate, and I think it's not even the school, it's what we do to ourselves. We graduate and we think, well, I graduate from drawing and painting, so I'm a painter. You know, I can't do anything else, I'm not allowed to do anything else. You put yourself into that box. I really believe that the medium, or the concept or the idea, there's something that defines what the medium has to be. Some things are meant to be sculptures, some things are meant to be paintings, and I think we shouldn't really force one thing to become the other. Equally, we shouldn't really force ourselves to be into one medium. So that's basically where that comes from. I graduated from painting, I was a painter, I really wanted people to see my paintings, and I was not a textile artist, and I think the North American mentality of art also reminds you to be conscious of where you might be going wrong, where you might be overstepping. And for me to create textile looking work, not being a textile artist, I was like, you're overstepping. Like, what are you doing? You're not allowed to do this. And that conflict was basically what caused that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Letting go in the sense of when the work is complete, allowing it to move on, no control. I am very happy. Once I'm done, I'm done. Okay. The part that's very precious to me is the process of making a painting. And my digital work becoming what it became also allowed me to, it changed my brain about painting. Again, I will say things about schooling that may change in you. I think schooling in academia puts us in a state of mind where we have to be academic about how we make work. We need to reference things. They need to speak about something. At some point, I had to consciously make the decision that I no longer want to cater to that thought process. And that mainly has to do with, I realized that in my paintings, I really enjoyed the first brushstrokes. Everything else felt like a chore. I didn't want to render the hand after I had drawn the, you do this and it's a hand. It's 5 fingers, you've drawn the outline, you've done the job, but after that you have to render it to look like a 3D hand, and that became like a chore. So that's where the transformation in painting comes. I started painting with only the first brush strokes. So a lot of my paintings are one sitting. I don't really use more than one sitting, except for, it really comes down to scale of work. But most of the works are a one sitting painting, and that's the aspect that's very precious to me, is that moment where I have to paint. Mm-hmm. And this will actually touch on the question of color, using it straight from the tube. I will just select what's going to happen in this painting, and that's the only decision I'm making, is which colors. And I'll pull those out, and after that, it's good luck. Purely, again, it's improvised. Process is so similar to my digital, but I think the part about like stepping away, coming back, working on it as a second day, watching it develop, the part that becomes complicated for me, this may not be the case with everyone, is that I'm not coming back with the same state of mind. And it's hard to go back to the state of mind I was in and approach the painting. But then there's paintings like this one. Took a long time for this to finish, but it also took over 6 months of having this image in my head and making up all these things. Like it was almost like I was coming up with excuses to not paint. It was like, I'm going to do it in oil. I'm an acrylic painter. I'm going to do it in oil. I figured out the colors. I had like these charts on my computer of what colors I'm going to use and all this to eventually, thanks to COVID, being stuck in the studio and there's no more going out and buying materials, so like paint. And I attached my brush to a long stick and I made the outline of this guy. And after that, it was like paint. So really depends, but I don't like having to step away and come back to a painting. Yeah. I am anti-machine made. Yeah. The only machine made I've opened myself to is the jacquard pieces, and that's mainly because of the relationship of computers to jacquard loom. Outside of that relationship, don't want things to be done machine made. There's a uniqueness to the hand that comes across in handmade, and I think that whole concept of originality is dead. There's no more originality, and really think that's wrong. I think originality is your hand. It's what your wrist does. It's this movement that makes you unique in your work. You can all draw the same circle. None of them is going to be the same. Forget making a circle accurate. It's just this motion is never going to be the same, and that's really where your uniqueness lies. So handmade, outside of like maintaining crafts and crafts continuing, I think the hand is more important than the outcome. So anti-machine made. When I first showed my digital work, at the time there was only one carpet and it was my prototype. That's the first time I heard the reference of prayer rugs. It's never crossed my mind. But this is what I enjoy about art, and I've seen it the most in response to my digital work, is that everybody has their own association that they make with the work, and the work keeps changing. So no matter what I tell you what my work is about, it's irrelevant. At the end of the day, what's important is what you see in it. But the prayer rug relationship is there. If you were to, I don't know, if you pray, or if, but there's areas like this is where your head would go. This is where your hands would go. Your knees would be somewhere here. So the format is actually quite like a prayer rug. In about 7 or 8 of them, it's actually like that. But I never made that relationship till somebody walked into the room and said, "Is that a prayer rug?" And I was like, "No, it's just a handmade version of this digital thing I did." So what I'm thinking about, if I'm thinking about anything when I'm making my work, it's just what do I do with this number, and if I change this number to this number, what happens? That's all I'm doing. Shift numbers around, and outcome is that. So spirituality has something to do with order and numbers and the patterns that form out of it. Thought I saw a hand. No? All right.
Thank you so much, Shaheer. This was really great.
Thank you, guys, everyone.